This is my video section for my third paper in RIT 1120, the rough and final draft, since I didn't do them as I went along. I will occasionally be looking off screen to refer to my Project 4 assignment sheet to make sure I highlight all the important points necessary for these videos, because while my previous videos served as good in the moment commentary, they don't really do that. Alright, so when I was conducting research for my final paper, paper 3, I had been going along since my research proposal, and I still did have sources to use from those, but I needed more sources because that wasn't enough to meet the minimum, and I didn't want to use some of the sources that were in my outline and bibliography anymore, so I needed to find more. In order to get those sources, I did use Google Scholar for some of them. Well, I did do this, and there was more room for bias or errors because of that. I did my best to fact check everything in those sources and make sure they were reliable before incorporating them into my paper. For the stuff that wasn't from Google Scholar, I found all additional sources from the EBSCO database, because that was the first one I was taught about when entering this class, and I found it to be very easy to use, and almost all the sources I found in it were of incredible use to me. Now, during the actual rough draft of my paper 3 writing, I still didn't have the minimum amount of sources, so between my rough and final draft is more of the same. Finding what parts of my paper I needed more sources for to have a more academic and well-articulated sounding paper. So it was like just more of using EBSCO and Google Scholar to find those sources, which I did. I met the 15 source minimum. All of the sources I used being, I think, pretty reliable, as unbiased as possible, while still supporting my point of capital punishment being a fundamental violation of human rights. So as unbiased as you could possibly get with such a topic. And in order to compose all of the information and research I took from these 15 sources, it was a rather difficult process because I could not save EBSCO articles no matter how hard I tried. And if you ever try to copy and paste an EBSCO link, at least for me, it would never work because that link was taken from a previous session, so I had to search for that source in EBSCO again, and I could only save excerpts from those sources to my drive. So actually taking that research that I had previously and composing it into my paper was very difficult. Well, not difficult, but tedious, because of having to go back and forth anytime I stopped writing, going and finding those sources again so I could continue developing my paper. But I did do it. I had to read a decent amount of every article or book or journal I cited. Certain books that I did use, I didn't read entirely because there are 500 plus pages, but what can you do? By the time of my final draft, I did have everything I needed. More than enough length and substance in my paper. And it worked out pretty well. I think it's fun to look back and think about what would have happened if I had changed my topic. But in the end, I never did. Like I said I would. I didn't do it. And I was still able to find all of my information I needed through research relatively easily and put together a pretty well articulated paper.